All right, so we are live. Today is Saturn Day, September the 13th, 2025. And we're going to immediately pick up where we left off. And plus, I'll be addressing your comments. So I appreciate all you leaving your feedback. So right off the bat, this morning, I posted about a show on Hulu, which I'm halfway through. It's called The Tempest. And it makes a few points because often I talk about how for something to be considered relevant PSYOP reinforcement content, that is concurrent programming, predictive programming, it has to have been viewed by a large number of people, the target demo for the PSYOP itself. So this pretty much makes my point for me. So the show Tempest, if you haven't seen it, let me first explain this. Season 1, it's 3 episodes. The very first episode, I thought it was the 3rd episode, but I'm watching it. The very first episode, it has a character who's a leader in a new Republican Party, and he gets shot in the throat in a church in front of a lot of people. Now, that obviously sounds a lot like what we just talked about. And by the way, someone told me that the name Kirk means church. But if you look this show up, it's called The Tempest. It dropped on September the 10th, all 3 episodes so far. So what we're looking at here is a clear example of concurrent programming where you're watching Hulu, you're watching this show, this Christian conservative Republican type who could be a future president gets shot in the throat on the exact same spot where Charlie Kirk was shot. So you couldn't call this predictive because it happened the same day. But what it does show is this, what I refer to as concurrent programming, something of an echo chamber effect. But here's what it's about. Well, there's a few things, but the main thing is this. This is what I wanted to focus on, is how popular is it? Well, it's climbing the Disney Plus charts, according to Flix Patrol. It's in the top 10 in Canada, New Zealand, Turkey, and it has the #1 spot in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. So we're talking #1 in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, in the top 10 and all these others. So it's obviously being watched. How many people were watching it on, at that same time, I don't know. But this is just one more example of this pattern, a consistent pattern of life imitating Netflix, life imitating Hulu. We live on planet Netflix, I've been saying. If it's streaming to a mass audience and it reaches a critical mass, it's probably containing propaganda messaging. So I'm watching it, and I'm going to do a more thorough review once I've had the chance to go through it and see what else, because it may contain other elements predictive of things that are yet to come. Another aspect to it, because the Charlie Kirk-esque character gets killed right away. However, the widow becomes the focus of the story. And one of the things that's been talked about with regard to this recent event, the Utah event, is his wife immediately took to the live stream and advocated for Turning Point USA and republicanism. And a lot of people thought it was strange, in bad taste, almost like, incongruent with what you would expect a mourning widow to be acting like. In fact, there were parts where she was smiling. She joked about the Oregon Ducks. So again, it's called The Tempest. And The Tempest is the title is Shakespeare. And I think that I'll have to look at this. There's more to this Tempest thing. But this is where we get the quote, "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it." Another point here. So yesterday we were talking about the gurney. And one of the things about the gurney, this is where you're seeing Charlie Kirk being moved over rapidly to the SUV. And someone showed a video, and it appears to show him on a gurney at one point. But the other shot, they're just carrying him. I can't even tell how they're holding the neck wound shut. Well, I looked at it closer and I paused it, and eventually I came to determine here that you're not looking at a gurney. You're looking at some kind of a table that they're passing in front of at that split second. So it gives the perception of a gurney, but no, another false one. Yeah, that's right, Lean Dion. She comes out and she says, they have no idea what they've unleashed. This widow's tears will echo like a battle cry. And then Kash Patel said, I'll see you in Valhalla. And a number of people think that's kind of weird because that's not heaven. Valhalla is where the Norse gods are, but it's specifically where the gods go to wait for Ragnarok, the end of the world, where mankind gets destroyed. And it's kind of notable, someone had found that the shooter is sitting in front of his computer and there's a map on there. There's an island. It turns out to be Goat Island in New Zealand, known for snorkeling. So it's like, wait a minute here. Why does the shooter, who has two photos of himself posing, with one with the red shirt, one with the blue shirt, identical poses, but why is he posing in front of Goat Island, New Zealand? So we look into it, and someone had found that there's some kind of Valhalla place, some sort of connection to. So anyway, interesting that Kash Patel would mention Valhalla. Had us thinking, did we find Crisis Actor Island? Is he literally going to meet them there? Lean Dion says, yeah, Erica Kirk is like America Church. Yeah, the name Kirk and church. And then another thing, in this movie, the character is shot in a church. I think that's significant. Jamarian May says, there's talk that Valhalla is underground in Kansas. Makes you think once you watch The Wizard of Oz. Well, like I said, I'm going to do a fuller review of this piece, of this movie, The Tempest, but it's getting involved with who was behind the assassination, and there's some kind of nuke subtext. So we're not done yet. And then I haven't seen the game Helldivers 2, but there's a mention on one of his bullets of this sequence of directional inputs, like up, right, down, 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 or something. And it drops this bomb, a 500-kilogram bomb called the Eagle. So that's kind of notable because the whole Turning Point, I've been saying for some time, Turning Point USA is a reference to Turner Diaries. And in Turner Diaries, the turning point is when they have an airstrike and they have a plane loaded with bombs. They fly into the Pentagon, and that kicks off a world revolution. Going through your comments. Yeah, he was a Mormon. Someone had mentioned that. I don't know if that means anything. But he was also a Antifa, anti-fascist. So you can't say he was a Groyper. The Groypers are fascists. So this guy was anti-fascist. And there's talk about his I don't know, his whole personal life. It's coming out, but I don't trust anything yet. There's so much truth or bait. We have to be very cautious about these narratives that are being dropped. All right, so let us continue. Oh, by the way, I mentioned the picture of him where he's addressing someone in a Q&A, and the person is wearing a shirt that says sniper. Well, right behind him, the Turning Point USA logo actually sort of mirrors the arc of the blood spurting out of the neck. What's up, the bros? What's up, King Ravana, Marcel, Precious Graham? Andrea says, thank you for joining. So again, to clear up, that was not a gurney. But if you had any doubts about this thing, there's more stuff that has been raised. So for example, why isn't it being treated like a crime scene? I mentioned how there were people tearing down the tent afterward. And so people are asking, were there even any cops? Did the police even show up? There's no crime scene tape. Was this even a crime? The police never showed up. Patriot Voice says, come to think of it, I haven't seen a single picture of police at the scene, nor have I seen any police tape not normal. Then you have someone taking down the tent after the shooting, tampering with evidence. A whole tidal wave of people praising the shooter, uh, and some people are even going further, suggesting that they should start taking out others. I mean, this is worse than when Luigi took out the CEO. Let's see here. If you go through my Twitter feed, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so Dr. Jane Ruby said, where did they take him? Hospitals record everything. The time of arrival, procedures, pronounced time of death, release to the coroner or the funeral director. Why is there no information about what happened after the shooting and the events leading up to his funeral? And I raised questions about this as well. I mean, it's not impossible to do an autopsy and an embalming and put him in a casket in less than 24 hours, I suppose, if they're rushing. But it just seems a little quick. And then he's already lying in state, and the wife is giving an impassioned speech and actually recording, or somebody's recording her grieving, playing with his hands, which is kind of morbid. Sorry about that. I'm trying to put the chat on the screen. There we go. All right, let's continue. Okay, here's something else that's turned up as well. So there's been this video circulating of what appears to be somebody on the side of him shooting him, and there's someone else who's making these hand gestures. So it's starting to look like multiple shooters, like 5 shooters. Like, I don't know what the hell it is, but the narrative here is that this was a professional operation, likely done because I don't know, they're blaming Israel, basically. A mirror of what happened with JFK, which is what I would call a guardrail. Look, as far as I'm concerned, Charlie Kirk is snorkeling at Goat Island, New Zealand. But if you think it's real, you're either believing it's some crazy who did it independently, or it's a conspiracy. And the conspiracy theorists are saying it's Israel, just like JFK. Rebel Black says, bro, we're living on Earth X. Yeah, Planet Netflix is what I've been calling it. But look, even though it's fake, the people who think it's real are responding like a bunch of demonically possessed hyenas. A lot of fake laughter. It's very dramatic, but it's real, or it seems like it. And a lot of them are crying because they're losing their jobs over this. And it's like, okay, so you can lose your life because of the things that you say, but losing the job, that's too much. All right, we had some comments here. So the Flat Bob said, I didn't see the ring change either, and the dot. Yeah, so the dot was a lapel mic, and the ring's been explained. Now, there's a lot of what I call truther bait that's been placed out there. And the truther bait is there to discredit people who are calling it fake. That's why it's there. It's to discredit the conspiracy theorists and make it look like they can't figure anything out. So you have to analyze this stuff carefully, but also keep in mind the fact that they're planting leads pretty much is proof positive that they're hiding something. I Am Thal says, that's some strong fabric on the shirt for the bullet to bounce off the vest and be repelled by the shirt. Yeah, a lot of people are saying it's a bulletproof vest and it's a bullet being repelled, but no, that was the mic. It's one of those magnetic mics. Okay, now, I also posted a video that Twitter censored. They censored it as graphic, even though they're not censoring the Charlie Kirk shooting clips. And this was from a movie. And the movie is, let me see if I can find it here, with John Cusack. And it shows the special effects that go into his bleeding neck wound. So if you haven't seen it, I posted it in Discord. But I mean, it's not a new movie. And it shows how they've been able to realistically create flaps of skin over the neck to hide the tube so they could have blood squirting out. and it looks convincing on camera. It was so convincing that Twitter censored it. Monolithium 33 milligrams says, Mr. James T. Kirk's address was really bizarre. Oh, Mrs. Yeah, Erica Kirk's address was bizarre. She should be an inconsolable wreck. Yeah, we compared that to Jackie Kennedy, but moving on. They Lie We See says, inside job is truth or speak. They're blaming the deep state. False flag doesn't mean anything. Yeah, the term inside job means the essential thing is real, but somebody else did it. And that's where they trap people. I don't think anyone here is falling for that stuff. And again, there's plenty more that has shown up. But to me, one of the most compelling things here, as far as is it real, is it fake, is this perfect mirroring of what happened real time on a #1 show on Hulu. All right, there's also, like I said, video of her with the corpse. And so if you look at the video and his hands and everything, it's clearly supposed to be an embalmed body. And so that all has, there's got to be a trail. Who's the funeral home? Who did the autopsy? These are all valid questions that have been raised. And again, why wasn't there any sort of attempt to investigate it like a real crime scene? Healthy Caribou had mentioned here that this theme of the throat getting cut with the subway and then him getting shot in the throat while he's speaking, it seems to be symbolic of free speech, and perhaps this being used as a pretext for cracking down on hate speech or violent political speech. And right now there's the blade throat variant of COVID. So I looked this up, and for the last couple of months, the razor blade sore throat, it's a new variant. Razor blade throat. This particular strain is causing what people describe as razor blade sore throat. So that's kind of interesting. Again, go to my blog or go to the newsletter and you'll see that this TV show had a very Charlie Kirk-esque character in a church getting shot in the exact same spot. Okay, here it is. It's called Grifters. So Grifters with John Cusack from 35 years ago has the squib, and it shows how they do it. And it's got a tube under a fake piece of neck. They've been doing this same thing for a long time. Again, we're looking into Crisis Actor Island, Goat Island, New Zealand, some kind of strange code. Pete Shea left a comment. Charlie Kirk, CK 31133, died 33 days before his 32nd birthday. Okay, the first guy they held as a suspect for the shootings, we're talking about the guy that looked like James Carville, who had his pants down when they were pulling him out of the stadium. He claims to have witnessed the two planes crashing in New York on 9/11 and was a witness to the Boston bombings. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. There were so many suspects they put out there, and then you had the people on the roof, and that's typical. I mean, this is almost a repeat of the JFK thing in a lot of ways. And then Roger Stone said, recently, Charlie Kirk invited me on the show to discuss the assassination of JFK. Was Charlie Kirk brutally assassinated by a nation state or a rogue element of our own government? So you can see where that's leading. But what are the odds? I mean, these things are adding up. Lots of foreshadowing. In fact, I saw another example of foreshadowing. Let me see if I can find it. It was a tweet by Laura Loomer. Let's see here. Okay, Days of Noah posted, look at Charlie's spotless white shoes after losing loads of blood. So now you do see about 10 people carrying him. I mean, how many people are, it's like they're, I don't know. I would like somebody, an EMT, to take a look at this, how they're carrying him out to the SUV. And are they properly covering up the wound and everything? But yeah, his shoes are spotless. That's kind of strange. MK Truth Ultra mentioned that in the speech, Erica Kirk, and again, in this show Tempest, it's about the widow. The Charlie Kirk-like character dies right away. But she says, quote, they killed him. The evildoers, plural, responsible for my husband's death have no idea what they've done. They killed him because he preached a message of faith and patriotism. So she speaks about a group, they should all know that they, again, this is her speech about the widow cry, the battle cry of the widow. Very strange. Evildoers, they killed him, they and all. How does she know? Like, is she purposefully leading somebody? And then there's more. Charlie Kirk's handler, Frank Turek. This is interesting. So you have to look at the book covers of Frank Turek, who has been described as Charlie Kirk's handler. So he's got a book called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need to Make Their Case. And it has a hole that rips out the O in God. Looks like a bullet hole. Then he has a book called Correct, Not Politically Correct, about same-sex marriage and transgenderism. And it has the globe with the rainbow flag over it, and then it has a bullet hole, so it's like the globe itself is shattered. So there's 2 book covers in a row that have some kind of bullet reference. Very peculiar. And a lot of people are noticing that there's several individuals around him who make strange hand gestures and signs and some kind of messaging at the exact moment that he is shot, or rather they set off the squib. So now I'm not convinced now that it was CGI with the blood or any of that. It doesn't have to be. A squid could easily have accomplished all of it. And the dot moving across the shirt was a mic. But we have to investigate every possible angle here. And one of these, yeah, it does look like somebody to his right shoots him. And it reminds me of how it looks like JFK's driver shoots him. Another video makes it look like Jackie Kennedy shot him. So I think this is deliberately engineered to be ambiguous. Then you have some kid in a red shirt with the 47 on his hat. And he was trying to describe what happened because he was up close. And while he's talking to the interviewer, someone gets in between him and the interviewer and blocks it and tells him to shut up. Patriot Voice says, not having an ambulance in wait at a political event with thousands of people in attendance is eyebrow raising in the least. There's no excuse for that. Lots of holes in the story. Now, according to the Health Ranger, influencers are being contacted by shadowy anons and told to support the lone gunman theory. And doing things will, quote, make things go much better for you. So supposedly, influencers are being threatened, more or less. Jamari May says the wife also misspoke. It said something about we and our in the present tense and then corrected herself. Jamari May says, anyone else feel like time is speeding up at a fever pace? Hard to get things done as time seems to speed up. Yeah, I think it seems to be. I think they're packing more and more news and more psyops per day than ever before. And it might be creating a distortion. And nobody can really hold their focus. Like they're still mad about the subway thing. And then this next thing happens. Now nobody remembers the name of the girl killed in the subway. And I saw some AI video of the killer and her hugging. And I mean, there's some bad deep fakes going out. Rico Soft says, my 11-year-old daughter knows this is fake. I've always shown her the truth. Well, I don't know if I would let anybody, I mean, the blood effects, that's rated R. It's PG-13 minimum. And personally, I can't really say, I'm not raising any children. However, I do not recommend any of this stuff to people who haven't already been through the program all the way. I mean, you're just going to get bad grades if you don't believe the stuff that you're going to be tested on. You know, if you don't believe in climate change, you're getting an F. If you question the story of 9/11, you're going to get an F. So I don't think it really is helpful to try to engage people in the info war until they're already out of the programming and they've got whatever degrees they needed. Rebel Black says, every event has built-in conspiracies. The template is real. Yeah, they're templates. And they're all like this. They always have a second shooter or a third shooter or a fourth shooter. They always have some way for the conspiracy theorists to blame Israel. It's like the official scapegoat. That's who they say did 9/11. That's who they said did JFK. It's a time-tested template. They never vary. But if you think it's real, you have a tall order if you're trying to make the case. There's a lot of things you have to refute. And one of the points that I've been making lately is that you cannot solely rely upon the visual deconstruction to take one of these events apart. You have to look at context, what I term metascript. You have to look at relevant, concurrent, or predictive programming. And when I said this yesterday, I didn't know that a TV show, a #1 trending show on Hulu, Disney TV show, I didn't know that it came out on the same day as Charlie Kirk and that it contained a Charlie Kirk-esque character getting shot in the neck. And the story then focusing on the widow. And I'm not done with this whole show yet. I'm going to continue to finish. I'm going to watch the rest of it tonight and I'll write a review. Who's Ill says, enough is enough card played. Yeah, and the enough is enough card, you're talking about the Illuminati playing card, was also mirrored on Time Magazine where it says enough about the political violence in America. But it's a closed set, and you can't look at these things as separate. Like this is Butler, Pennsylvania, part 2. 5 says, it's hard to tell what's fake and real these days. I don't think it's hard. I think it's actually kind of formulaic. And the burden of proof is never on you anyway. If they can't prove it to you, you're under no obligation. Salty Siren says, it's annoying to be forced to waste imagination on sadistic pageants. Yeah, I can't imagine how I would feel if I thought this stuff was real. Like I mean, before I looked critically at any of this stuff, I figured that the human race was doomed and that we'd be better off getting slammed by an asteroid. Like I kind of thought we were just like Agent Smith says. I kind of bought that. But I'm no longer a misanthrope. That's just part of the conditioning that you have to throw out. All right, I'm going through your comments. What's up, PsyOp Sidecar? Look, I say real until proven fake is the way normal people, the normie news consumer goes, but you can't do that anymore. It's irresponsible. It's a dereliction of duty to critically evaluate the nonstop streams of propaganda. And I've been talking about parallel propaganda streams, how the same messages are going to be pumped out in all the movies as they roll out the psyops in real life. I say it's parallel streams. And this explains what we just talked about, the Tempest, and how Tempest specifically has a scene that played out on TV. Like the most talked about, focused upon event on 9/10 was Charlie Kirk. And that TV show on Hulu Disney, the #1 show in Japan, Taiwan, and other places, has the exact same scene in a fictionalized context in the church. I mean, I'm only now getting into it. He's the leader of the new Republican Party that gets taken out. I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but tomorrow I will have a full breakdown of it because it's going to probably foreshadow what happens next. Joined by Intelligent Counterspell. Sup, guys? I'm glad you found you again. I watched you on BitChute. Oh, okay. If you didn't know, bitchute.com/Infinite Plane Society. Rebel Black says, Tim, maybe the Great Reset happens when the majority of people don't believe in these events. I would say they have us on lockdown because you have Normieville and then alternative media, but they're all in the same box. And more significantly, they're all believers. They're passive consumers of media from their chosen sources, but they're believers rather than understanders, knowers, analysts. There's a fundamental distinction. They approach media like it's religion. Thank you, Marcel. Cassandra, good old fashioned. Van Kiersblick, plain decoded. Kate Emma. You all have titanium blue wrenches. They should be left on your porch here any minute. Braveheart says BitChute equals itsjews.com. Yeah, I use BitChute as a backup. My books, my videos are automatically exported over there, but the comments are just a bunch of groypers. It's all woke right. Woke right, woke left, they're equally annoying. And they're quite literally the most mind-controlled people on earth. And the red pill represents basically a form of wokeism, as we've been describing. In fact, I have all this detailed in the new book, and I believe the new book is #1 in new releases under philosophy on Amazon. So if you go to ips.monster, you can get a link to see the book. Again, it's called Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed. So right now we're talking about the Charlie Kirk hoax, predictive concurrent programming in the Tempest, and it's episode 1 where it happens, and it released at the same time. One of the best examples of concurrent programming in a long time, and this is a game changer. Concurrent programming is a paradigm shifter. It explains things that could not be explained by looking at things as predictive in the past. Jamarian says, Tim, why do they do such a poor job of forming these psyops, so many holes and errors? Well, what we think are errors are misdirection lines, guardrails. So when you think, how could they be so sloppy? No, they put that there because they know the critical thinkers are looking for flaws and they want to lead you to another conclusion. So all the hand signs, all the indicators of a professional job, yeah, that's designed to lead people to think it's Mossad. That's where it's going. Rico says, I want a 10 by 12 penguin painting. I will list some on eBay. 5 says you can take the red pill, blue pill, or punch Morpheus in the face. Well, yeah, so the blue pill, red pill thing, it's a false dichotomy because they're both in the matrix. One just goes deeper. One takes a perfectly enjoyable dream and turns it into a nightmare. I mean, that's what the red pill does. It fills you up with phobias, with fear. It turns you into a woke right activist at the end of it. Mizell says, Korean show, yep, they're in the mix for concurrent programming. Yes. In fact, one of the main characters in it is the one of the, he's the guy in Squid Games who wears the mask. Yeah, so the errors are on purpose, Rico Sauce. You're right about that. The errors are on purpose. Like, I even think now that maybe WTC 7 was done to create the 9/11 truth movement. Because the truther movements, the conspiracy theories, every single one of them is controlled opposition. None of them are true. That might be hard for you to accept, but think about it. Chemtrails has been around for 25 years. Nobody solved it. It's unsolvable on purpose. It's logically fallacious, unfalsifiable. These are designed that way because they know not everyone's going to fit in the mainstream box. So they create these alternative boxes, the MSM plus, the conspiracies, and all of it keeps you from rejecting the essential appeal to authority the screen has. Intelligent Counterspell says, I remember listening to this channel when he used to have a caller on. They said he knew Michael Jackson. That was pretty funny. Yeah, I remember that caller. And he said Michael Jackson came back as Dave. So about 9/11, that was intentional. So they create the conspiracy theory movements, the anti-war, anti-vax, anti-geoengineering, anything that's poised to be the antithesis to whatever the mainstream proposition is controlled. So you got to be anti. You have to reject the programming of alternative media the way you rejected the programming of the mainstream. So instead of alternative programming, instead you should opt out of programming altogether. And you can see it on X. You can see how people fall for this stuff. It's not their fault necessarily. I mean, you have to give them credit for looking, for rejecting lies. But the reason why people aren't arriving at the right conclusion is because there's never been a platform for those who are critical of media that wasn't entirely controlled. And that's where the IPS enters the stage, because we are platforming what I call the off-world stage perspective. It does not exist anywhere else. Shamarian says, remember the caller that went to acting school with Gene Rosen? I think that call was in 2020. Yes, I do recall that. I mean, look, these actors are just some of the worst. The Government Actors Guild. And I've seen some other actors who seem to have been trained by Gene Rosen, the Gene Rosen School of Crisis Acting. Epically bad. Like, they go off script and they just start method acting, and it's absolutely cringe. The Unknown Kid says, so this kid is a groiper? No, he's not a groiper. He's Antifa. No, so woke. He's woke left. He's Antifa. Groiper is fascist. This guy was anti-fascist. And there's more coming out about him. I don't trust any of it. I'll wait. People are saying he's a patsy. That's not even accurate. Just like the guy who shot Trump, who pierced Trump's ear with an AR-15. These aren't patsies. These are actors. They're in a play. It's a drill. It's not real. And if you think it's real, what is your basis for saying so? It looked real? Because it looked real is not good enough evidence. Not in 2025. Really not ever. But more now than ever, that's inexcusable. Again, it's dereliction of duty. You're not controlling your own mind. Lean Dion says, Charlie did a great job in this one. Could be the best yet. Well, if you look at his tweets, there's plenty of foreshadowing. Like back in 2014, he's like, I just got shot with an AR-15. There's plenty. The News is Fake 4, great channel. You should post a link to your channel. Great compilation of crisis actors and staged events. What do you think about the Gideon pre-crime AI, real or fear psyop? Probably real. They're saying this killer, the shooter, was radicalized on Discord And what they're doing, I think, too, is they are definitely acclimating the public to the idea that AI is a higher intelligence. So it's not going to be an alien invasion, a higher intelligence that takes over to save man from man. It's going to be AI. Jermarian says, what did Pompeo say about 2020 being some sort of real life exercise? Yeah, that sounded like a slip. Like Trump wasn't in the know. But you can't imagine Trump to be a rogue. He's not fighting the deep state. There is no deep state. There is only the state. And for all intents and purposes, there's only one government. I say it's monolithic. It really is. How else do you explain this event in America having a perfect parallel in this Disney Hulu production in Korea? Nicholas Pitt says, I don't want to get off topic, but have you ever experienced anything you would consider supernatural or UAP? Well, UFOs are fake, invented by the government in order to not only discredit people who might see advanced craft that's classified, but they want you to believe in aliens because they're updating the paradigm. Aliens are angels that the atheists will believe in. They want you to be superstitious. And as far as like UFOs, UAPs, no. I have this kind of axiom that moving lights in the sky are airplanes until proven otherwise. Like this thing that happened in New Jersey was embarrassing, where the whole state went into a panic because everybody started seeing drones and they were calling the police. They're reporting on drones. We're being attacked by drones. Every single one of those reports of drones turned out to be an airplane. How does that happen? Flat Earth Revolution says, hey, IPS, why did the gunshot sound so close to him? Good question. Good question. I think it was a blank, and it might have been deployed very close to him. There were several people around who were moving conspicuously at the time that it happened. So I suspect one might have done the blank. One might have pulled the trigger on the squib, to squirt the blood. But there's definitely some kind of censorship buildup that's been going on. And we addressed this back when Mountainhead came out. If you haven't seen Mountainhead, it came out just as the riots in Los Angeles kicked off. And then the No Kings protests, where you had like 1,000 protests scheduled. And it was about Elon Musk. They didn't even try to hide it. Sam Altman, Zuckerberg, and maybe somebody else in the mix. But it was about generative AI getting so out of control that it was causing chaos in the world, and the Musk character didn't care. It even had him having a relationship with a president that went kind of cold, like what happened with Musk in real life at that time. But my point of it is, they've been making the case for some time that unmitigated free speech and generative AI is a threat to public sanity, to public health, public safety, that the mentally ill are being radicalized, that regular people are being radicalized. So what they're going to do, I think, with this, I call it disease X. When the WHO brought up the monkey, then they brought up the big one that's going to take us all down again. They called it disease X. It's a placeholder. And I said, disease X is probably a reference to mind viruses. And they're going to get the public to acquiesce to an internet lockdown so they can get rid of the mind viruses. And then you'll have to have your mind vaxxed to get back online. You'll have to mask your comments. You know what I mean? Like, essentially, they won't get us completely guardrailed and censored in their paradigm until they have us agreeing to certain guardrails and controls. And that's ultimately what it's about. Yeah, good point, IB Hendrickson. Usually when you get shot, you don't bleed that soon. It takes a bit, not like in the movies. Yeah, that's actually a valid point. Like, I was kind of wondering about that. I mean, I'd like to see the autopsy report. I think it's questionable that less than less than 24 hours after the shooting, he was already being paraded around in a casket. Highly unlikely, in my opinion. Ivory Henriksen says, is AI going to be taken down eventually? Well, they've already started working on guardrailing it. And one point to also consider is that everything that is prompted out of whatever chat you're using, GPT or whatever, it's going to come from the perspective of mainstream mediation. It's a world stager, to use our terminology here. So it's already controlled, but they've already been discussing guardrails. They use that term, which I think is interesting because we were using it to describe conspiracy theories that prevent you from reaching the right conclusions. Gondola Wish says, isn't it interesting how they try different things like monkeypox and it goes nowhere? It shows how they need us to create their dark reality. Right. Like they do these tests, like they're market testing the next PSYOP to see how well it goes. But with the monkeypox thing, I think it was more about introducing a meme. So monkeypox is declared a global threat on 8/14/2024. And this is the same day that Bad Monkey comes out with Vince Vaughn on Apple. And right after that, you had Chimp Crazy on HBO, monkeys loose throughout Ohio, like lab monkeys. And what we were noticing was like, what's going on with this reoccurring theme? Then you had this 80-foot statue of the monkey god, Onaman, put up in Houston. And then there was a video game called Black Myth, where 1 million people were live streaming this game where you're playing the role of the monkey god that they made the statue of in Houston. So these disparate events all happened at the same time, and it seemed to be this concerted messaging. I'm like, well, where is this pointing? Then you had Monkey Man, the movie produced by Jordan Peele, came out on 3/11 about a boxer wearing the monkey god mask. So what we concluded here is it all ties into 28 days later about the chimps, the apes, the monkeys in the lab that are turned violent by being forced to watch violent TV. And then their violence becomes some kind of a virus that we catch. So they made the connection between TV and a virus that makes you violent. And they associated it with the symbol of the rabid monkeys, the killer apes. So that violent monkey, rage monkey theme is what I had pointed out back when I said disease X, Twitter is the vector for disease X. Well, then, you fast forward and we just watched the Superman movie. And this is getting really interesting now because in the Superman movie, you have an Elon Musk-like character who has all these monkeys in a parallel dimension typing hate speech on Twitter 24/7. So there's that. And then Lex Luthor's character is using this this robot by remote control and is having it punch Superman repeatedly in the face. I think it's called Ultraman. So it's this gratuitous violence where Superman is getting punched. And it seemed to look like when Raja Jackson, when Raja Jackson was punching Psycho Stu. So when Psycho Stu shows up in the hospital that night, there's a picture of him that's posted on TMZ. And I'm like, that's got to be a HIPAA violation, but regardless. And his sleeve was rolled up and he had a Superman tattoo on his arm. So I thought that's obviously some more concurrent like programming, connecting these psyops to the movies as always. Yeah, Soul 101, I painted the stabbing. They're gonna supposedly Musk is gonna give out $1 million worth of grants for artists to do murals. So I needed an example. Yeah, I'll paint that on City Hall or whatever wall space they'll give me. In fact, if you want that painting, I don't think eBay will let me list it. So hit me up in Discord if you want that painting or anywhere else. I mean, I will send it to you. All right, let's get back into my notes. Again, we're kind of following up on things. People are making some strange connections. They're looking at the place where he was seated, the whole auditorium, this outdoor venue, and people are saying the landscape looks like a giant menorah, which it kind of does, but I don't think it's the right number. But regardless, some people say it's a pentagram. But I see this conspiracy theorizing is only intensifying with nobody calling it fake. For example, some suggest that it's this hidden pistol called a protector palm pistol. And there's somebody next to Charlie who does this shooting gesture, but so does somebody behind him. So it just looks like a lot of people are potentially the shooters or they're collaborating. For example, Erlandera says, this is on Twitter, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by his own bodyguards. Inside job motivated by his recent anti-Zionist political views. Mossad, Israel, and the CIA killed him just like JFK. Which is what Roger Stone was suggesting. A lot of people say the shooter looks like Oswald. I don't see it, but people are saying. Brock Purdy looks more like Oswald. Somebody said he looked like me. I'm like, no, I look more like Lanza or John. Was it John? No, Justin Moan. They've been calling him Justin Osmond, the guy who chopped his FBI father's head off. This running joke that they're modeling their psychos off of me. I don't think so. Now, there's a few other areas I haven't looked into here, but like Dimitri Legend points out, he's got some great, this guy here, Dimitri Legend is the one who pointed out the TV show, The Tempest. He said it's a coded ritual timed with blood moons, Masonic signatures, pointing at a paradigm shift. The symbolic execution of free speech and freedom of expression, buried step by step, replaced by AI, biometric surveillance, and technocracy. I really don't find a flaw in that. The fact he was wearing freedom on his shirt, I mean, that already kind of, it's a prop. Very squibby. And squibs weren't really a thing that most people knew about. Like, squibs are being talked about now like crazy, but it wasn't really a thing before. I didn't know what squibs were until after Christchurch. All right, let's see here. The bullet that killed, Russian TV said this bullet killed moderate. I don't think so. I don't think Nick Fuentes is taking over, but that might be what they're trying to push. Tucker Carlson said that after Charlie Kirk went to the White House to urge Trump not to strike Iran, he received massive abuse and intense messages from his donors and made real enemies. A lot of whodunit type conjecture. But again, it's not a whodunit, it's a what is it. I'm going to post a link if anyone wants it to the John Cusack from Grifters. You can see the neck wound, not a new thing. So another point, I've been talking about the Turner Diaries and how it related to Turning Point USA. And I've been talking about that since 2020. Well, The Atlantic now said, what if this is a turning point? Charlie Kirk's closest allies will determine whether the next few weeks bring confrontation, de-escalation, or something in between. But the reoccurring theme here, turning point. And I brought this up again because on one of the shells, the shooter had etched in a reference to a 500-kilogram airstrike bomb. Well, in the novel Turner Diaries, the central turning point is the suicide bombing of the Pentagon by Earl Turner. And this is the decisive act that cripples the system, that cripples the US government, and allows the white supremacist organization to consolidate power and nuke everybody else. It's a global race war. So the turning point is a reference to a global race war. And I think it's significant that the day after the shooting, you have the first White Lives Matter gathering, which wasn't impressive or big, but the sentiment has been building up. And with the subway killing, it kind of cemented that this is now a thing. We talked about the fact that it was a 33-hour manhunt. Everybody reported that number, a 33-hour manhunt. The governor of Utah said he was praying for 33 hours the shooter would be a Muslim, or not one of ours, is what he said. Very strange comment, by the way. Lots of conflicting things about the shooter. I'm going to wait on that. Erica Kirk said the cries of the widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. And again, the show The Tempest is about the widow after the Charlie Kirk-like character gets shot. Yeah, Ollie Goering with her weird whispering. She's trying to be dramatic. She's quaking, and she did the Joe Biden whisper. I wasn't moved. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Tyler. The bereavement process was completely absent here, and then she inappropriately, like the emotions were inappropriate, especially the laughing. Thank you, DG. Appreciate that. $2 into the tank. But yeah, 33 hours of praying. Like, what the hell was that? Soul 101 said, it's crazy because 3 days ago, a white guy unalived 3 black people and it barely got any coverage. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can find instances of a lot of different people, like not all these stories that happen, or not all these events fit the paradigm that they want to put out there, and they will ignore stuff. And they hyper focus on certain details, and they engineer narratives that go unquestioned. I mean, people are super programmed these days. It's unbelievable. Now, here's something else too. Tell me this has got to be scripting. Here's another coincidence. Like in real life, these types of things don't happen. This is too ironic. This is a movie. Charlie Kirk assassin Tyler Robinson lived with his transgender partner, and the partner is speaking to the FBI as per Fox's Brooke Singman. So the significance here is that Charlie was shot after saying there were too many trans shooters over the last 10 years. So what are the odds that he would make that statement and then he would get shot in the neck? To me, that's basically like a movie. Cheryl Jacobus says, Charlie Kirk was not taken to the hospital in an ambulance. It was a private car. His body was in possession of Trump and the vice president, to the point of Vance flying with it on his plane to Arizona. Make of it what you will, but I have questions, specific autopsy questions. Valid concerns there. No ambulances, no police. And when somebody dies unexpectedly or they're murdered, there has to be an autopsy. I mean, where is the investigation? And then after the autopsy, you have to have the body put back together so it can be put in the casket. And I'm not saying it couldn't be done in 24 hours, but that's a rush job. Just on time for 9/11 ceremonial events, like walking the casket out, and then they put it up. I mean, to me, if anything, it's more likely it was a dummy used for PR and the body's still in a refrigerator somewhere. I just think it's very rapid. All right, let's continue. Follow me on Twitter. It's IPS Think Tank. You'll get pretty much all of our receipts are going to be showing up there and on myminds.com. But the main one to really focus on here, I think, and to me, this is a classic example of the total control over the media ecosystem at any time. I say they paint the zeitgeist. The fact that you have a perfect recreation of the event on TV as it happens. And the show, again, is called Tempest, and a reference to Shakespeare, which is where we get Brave New World. And what else? Oh, yeah, hell is empty. All the devils are here. Five says 17-year-old Austin Metcalf's mom did an interview within a few hours, did not act like someone who lost her son. Yeah, now I've been talking about this Austin Metcalf thing. One of the stories with that one, of course, it ties into Sinners with Michael B. Jordan, who played his own twin. So you have the twin dying in his arms bleeding, and then in real life, Austin Metcalf dies in his twin brother's arms. And there's the racialized component. They try to racialize the whole thing. They try to turn Austin Metcalf into a white Trayvon Martin. And then the movie ends where the main character, the protagonist, kills the leader of the clan, the Grand Dragon. So I'm like, that's interesting because we just had, a number of events in the wake of that where they're totally hyping up black versus white. And then kind of, I think the killing of Charlie Kirk, the leader of Turning Point USA, which platforms a lot of identitarian politics at times, even though they try to be moderates, doesn't seem insignificant here. It also ties into the madness. Even more specifically, in the madness, the leader of a group called The Forge is killed. And the shooter runs off. There's a manhunt. And here we had a manhunt for a few days, a 33-hour manhunt. Marcel says 200-yard shot is easy. Anyone could have made a shot like that. Yeah, I don't think that's that difficult, to be honest. How far away was Trump's shooter? I'm surprised they didn't paint up Trump's shooter as a flat earther, because they want to demonize every conspiracy theorist demographic. They could have used that. They could have said the reason he missed is he didn't account for the Coriolis effect. So his aim was good, but the earth rotated Trump out of the path of the bullet. But to the point of an earlier commenter, I do agree. It appeared that the sound of the bullet was much closer. Rico Sauce, can you post a link to your art? Yeah, just go to timosmond.art. I do have a Substack. You can find my eBay link. All right, let's continue down my notes. Again, tampering with evidence, that's a big one. The gurney, not a thing. Lack of police, lack of ambulance, highly questionable. A lot of people said that for them, the turning point where they realized it was probably fake was the wife speaking. And I concur with that. Again, the name of his handler, Frank Turek, has several books, and the book covers seem to foreshadow a shooting, an assassination. Again, one of the books is called Stealing from God. It's got a bullet hole in the middle. And the other one is Correct, Not Politically Correct, about same-sex marriage and transgenderism. And it has a shattered globe with a bullet hole on it. And then the rainbow flag. I mean, that is foreshadowing. And that's someone close to Kirk. So again, very conspicuous. Now, I haven't been contacted, but Health Ranger says influencers are being contacted by shadowy anons and told you better support the lone gunman theory or else. So the conspiracy theorizing is not going to go away. Go to my blog, just you can infiniteplainsociety.com, and check out the pictures from Tempest and tell me that's not a Korean Charlie Kirk. There's also drone footage. There's drones above the event. That's interesting. I'd like to see what they show. You know, like there were drones above Kenosha that nobody heard about until the case, until the trial. Okay, well, we will be continuing this conversation tomorrow. Mainly want to update on what we had already looked at. Again, we are willing to be proven wrong. We're checking out every potential error, glitch, and everything that seems a little suspect. But as I suggested, as I predicted more or less, as time goes on, as the days go on, more is going to pile up. That's going to indicate that this is likely staged. And I think that what seals it for me is the Tempest. In fact, there was something about the Tempest, I believe it's in our Gilded. Maybe it's even being performed next month. Let me pull this up. Synchromorpheus had found something. Oh, nice. News anchors mentioning the dot. Yeah, okay. A lot of the things that have circulated as evidence of a conspiracy are obviously planted. Oh, listen to this. Shipwreck Show said, many people feel a certain way about the video being shared. The consensus is to refer back to Jackie O when she refused to change her bloody shirt. So there's another JFK connection or correlation that they're trying to force onto it. But let me get up to the Tempest. Again, I'll have a review of it tomorrow. One more episode. It's not bad. I was watching it while I was packaging the art that I shipped out. So if you ordered any art from eBay, it's already in the mailbox. People are also sharing photos of the subway stabbing and how her earlobes look different on her modeling photos, suggesting it's not the same person. Wouldn't shock me, but I need to look into it. Okay, here it is. At Utah Valley University, they're performing a Tempest. Interesting. I mean, I don't know the significance of how they may have, if there's anything about it, because it's modernized, but I'll keep an eye on that one. All right, let me go through your comments if there's anything else. Andy says, if he was shot by a 30-06, his neck would have exploded. Yeah, you know, I tend to agree with a lot of these assessments. Like, there's like blood on the ground, blood on his shoes. But you have to be careful about being. Experts would know. If you're a hunter, you would know. I'd like EMPs to chime in on the way they carried him out. Yeah, Mazel, the Tempest show is pretty good so far. It's the #1 in Japan, Taiwan, Korea, top 10 in Canada, Australia. I mean, it's a #1 trending show, which underscores the point that the propaganda is saturating the very people who are going to be seeing Charlie Kirk getting shot. That's why they made him even more famous leading up to this event by having him on South Park as Cartman. And again, Cartman previously, you know, dresses up as Hitler, as a Klansman. You know, they wanted to make a very terrible caricature of him so that when he shot, the lefties, especially those on TikTok, will celebrate it. You know, they engineered these reactions. It's an influence op. And here's another point too. is whenever there's a psyop, there's always going to be a bifurcated response left and right. You know, everything gets perfectly polarized. It fits so neatly. It just, to me, that is another indicator of a hoax. Like, you know, reality shouldn't really play out like a template, but that's what we get. Yeah, exactly, DG. The fact that the shooter pulled the trigger at that exact moment, it comes off as irony. You know, it's like, but no, it's not irony. That's script writing. All right. Well, thanks everyone for the comments. Thanks for supporting the channel and also for ordering the book. Those hard copy, I mean, the paperbacks will be here. I'll be signing them, shipping them out. They're already on Amazon. Handbook for the recently deprogrammed. If you haven't seen the newsletter, just go to ips.monster. And we'll follow up tomorrow with any additional developments. There's a lot I kind of glossed over, so there's plenty to talk about. And we'll be back in an office space with open phones here very soon. And then tomorrow I'll be back with more details about the Tempest, which is to date one of the best examples of concurrent programming we can point to. And I also want to point out that we predict this stuff like we did with Trump. Like when these events happen, you're going to see something in whatever the top show is that day that mirrors it almost 100% of the time. And this was no exception. So that says something about our methodology. If this was real, we wouldn't be able to predict this stuff. If this was real, we wouldn't be able to say, hey, look, this questionable event happened. Let's see what's on Netflix. Because life apparently follows Netflix. Like, no, we're not psychic. I mean, either A, we're psychic, or B, we know what we're doing when it comes to critically analyzing the propaganda streams. And I say streams because they're parallel streams. One hits the news, one hits the entertainment. All right, thanks for the comments. We'll see you all